Normally I'd show you this build by showing you the box art and basically do an unboxing and then documenting the build, but it so happens that in this particular case the model I chose was something that I did not get in a box. It was something I picked up at a swap meet. And what it is the Curtiss Jenny. So I didn't get it in a box, it was just a bag with a bunch of parts. Seems all the pieces are there except for the stand and this little dolly that comes with it. And what it is a biplane. Now this particular model was something that was originally created by Lindberg in 1955, but this particular version with this number and the classic replica series was something that was made in 1986. So still quite an old model. You can see it's a simple sheet for the instructions somebody put at one point in a binder. And basically a one-page instruction on how to assemble it. There's no real information about the rigging, and I really want to talk about the rigging because the rigging was one of the reasons why I chose this as my next model. It was something of a challenge. It's something I've never done, the rigging, and it seems quite hard to do from what people are saying when they document these types of builds. So a lot of people use thread for the rigging. Some of them use stretch sprue that they put over a flame to make really thin sprue and then glue that in place, and that's all rigid. Some people use easy line, which is a little more costly. Basically it's a stretchable thread. What I thought I would try to use is this actually elastic thread, which is really cheap. It's like, you know, $2 for the spool. One of the worries I had is that it may be too thick, you know, in proportion to the model itself. And if I take the wing, you can see it's quite thick. But the more you stretch it, and it is very stretchable, it does get a little thinner, and it does look a little bit better. So my intent is to use this thread when it gets down to doing the rigging on this model. And we'll see how it goes. I might change my mind later on, but that's the plan anyhow. So we're back after priming these. I've got a little batch over here. I did start working on the motor, and you can see there's some nice detail over there. And the motor, I put a little Vaseline because the two parts that join together had the spindle separately, so I can try to keep it so that it can still turn, and was successful with that. So that'll be nice once I have the prop on there. And one thing I noticed about the kit that is missing aside from the stand, and that's the windshield. There's supposed to be two small windshields that go right over each cockpit over here, and that's probably because it came with the stand as a piece of clear plastic, and that's what was missing from the kit. But as far as I can tell, all the other parts are there, so we should be good. There's some really nice detail on the figures over here. I don't know if you can see that there. Look at that. So I'm hoping that gets preserved as I paint it. Same thing with the pilot and co-pilot over here. Some really nice detail on their face, the goggles, you know, the boots. You can see the laces. Mind you, this is all going to be hidden once they're in, but I'll try to preserve as much as possible during the build. And now I'm going to start doing, probably start with the figures and the smaller pieces first. The cockpit has some details. There's no decals with this kit, so I'm going to have to paint those dials in, so a lot of that will probably be lost because it's very fine. Barely see it myself, never mind through the camera. But we'll see how it goes. Alright, an update on the Jenny. You can see I've done quite a lot since the last video. Primed the main pieces over here. I actually finished this little carrying stand that goes under the nose cone, but you know, they bring the plane around, so that's all done. Painted the figures. This is the one standing outside. A little touch up I can probably do for the face over there. The crew in the cockpit, I managed to get the dashes in there, ready to go for that. The next step is just going to be to basically seal that. I'll probably need some more putting and maybe a little priming before I can go on to the main paint job. But one thing I want to talk about now is the rigging, and at one point I mentioned I was thinking of using this rather heavy elastic for the rigging, but I saw somebody make a video with something much better, and I thought I'd give it a shot. And I ordered this very thin elastic thread, and it seems that it's great. It's very, very fine, very flexible, seems to be easy to work with. And then I saw another video on how to make rigging mounts where you don't have the pivot points. Like some of these have the points where the rigging will go to, and you can glue them in there, but you want kind of a harness, a mounting point for these. And for that, this is a wire with very fine gauge each strand. I'm not sure what gauge that is, but that is very fine. I'm guessing 40-50. And what you can do, you can probably hardly see this, so you can make these very, very fine. I don't know if I can focus in there, but you can make these little mounts by twisting the wire. And what I've done is created a tool, again based on the video, where you can do that. And again, see this little pivot point there. Let me see, maybe with that. And what you do is you take one of the strands. I'll take a fresh strand here, and pretty much bend it in half. You probably can't see this on the video, it's so fine, but bend it in half, more or less, and you grab that loop and you just twist, make it really, really tight, and then it keeps the loop at the end. And believe it or not, that fine loop, you can string this in there. It's actually easier than it looks. Here, just like that, boom. And of course, once you glue this in place, you can string it and give it a little tension, just enough so that it stays, taut after it's built, and you don't have to worry about warping or anything like that. So again, that's where we are now, making a lot of progress. I don't know if I showed the engine, but yeah, that's all painted. I'll probably do some washes still on that, and we've got most of the other fiddly bits here. The wooden pieces all painted up with the propeller. Probably going to give it a little more staining action there with darker brown to make it look like wood. And I think that's it for now. Alright, we got an update. I did a little painting, as you can see over here. I used that deck tan brown. To be honest, it's a little darker than I'd hoped, but it'll do. One thing I noticed also, after giving that first coat, I could see that it wasn't completely even, and I thought I was going to give another coat, but then I realized, no, I want that splotchy, dirty look. So this is actually one of those happy surprises or happy accidents. You can see I had some protectors over the cockpit over here, and everything looks good from the paint job, at least as far as I can see. I did keep part of the tail end over here covered with tape because I'm going to paint that, but I want it to be as bright as possible, so I said no point in putting it another coat of brown under there. I did finish making all the mounting rigging mounts. That one wire basically gave me like 40 or 50 of these. I didn't count exactly how many I need, but I'm pretty sure I have enough. But just goes to show you, it goes a long way, that one one piece of cord, power cord, has 40 or 50 strands. One thing I did not mention beforehand, and you may have noticed in the prior video, there's a few places on the fuselage where those rigging goes into, where there's no indentation on the model itself. So what I did is I went online and tried to find some blueprints, which I actually kind of found from an ad that showed the rigging, and from that blueprint I was able to calculate using reference point where those mounting points are on the model. And there's really only 3, you know, on each side. And what I did is I marked them out, and I made little indentations in here before I did the painting to not lose those spots, just so I have that mounting point already in place and it's all symmetrical and even and all that. I also painted the front over here, but no big deal there. One thing I want to show you is a technique I saw online where you can give an enhanced effect of the raised ridges on these wings. And basically the idea is to mask off where the elevated points are, and then go back and give it a quick shot of paint a little darker right across those lines, and it gives you that enhanced 3D effect. Although there is, you know, already a 3D on the model itself, it just looks a lot better, because in real life that would be, you know, metal pushing under, so it's a more stress, therefore a little lighter up on top. And what I'm trying to doing this is not using, you know, the regular Tamiya tape, but I'm using something called washi tape. Supposedly just as good. You get 10 rolls for like $5, and what you do is you lay down the strips, and basically I'm trying to have 1 millimeter width, more or less. It doesn't have to be perfect. And after you lay it down a strip before you cut it, cut off the top so that you know that you will have at least one perfect line there, and then you go down, you know, 1 millimeter at a time. And then I, you know, measured the width I needed and then cut those off. So you can see here, I can show you, get one, the tricky part. And after you have them, you just lay them across the top. And try to do it always from the same side so that you're putting, you know, the same stress on as you're going through the whole model. And the trickiest part is to make sure you just get it right on top there. And there you go. So it's a lot of work. There's still quite a few to do. I'll have to do another roll over here, but hopefully it'll make it look better. And that's the whole point. And that's it for now. Alright, a little update from the last section of video that I created. One of the things I did was I wanted to use some panel line accent color to give a little more detail for things like, you know, the panel lines eventually, but also over here on the wheels, the little spokes, or just around the edges. A little bit of a gaff there is I had enamel paint, and the way you use this panel line accent color is you put it on, wait till it dries a bit, and then you go over with a Q-tip and some mineral spirits to clean it off and just leave what you want back there on it. Enamel doesn't go good with the mineral spirits, so not a big deal. I just cleaned it all up. I was doing it anyhow, and gave it some acrylics. I put a little panel line color. You barely see it on the video over here, but it is there, and it'll look better when I actually use it for the panel lines. The next thing I want to talk about was the turnbuckles. I had those little microscopic copper turnbuckles that I had made, a whole bunch of these, showed them last time, but I thought that they were very, very small, but more importantly I was worried that when I use something that thin with the thread line that I'll be using for the rigging, that it may actually cut into that thread line. So I said I would try something else, and what I ended up using was wire wrap wire, which is 30 gauge, a little thicker, still very small. Again, you can see the scale. It's you can probably barely see it on the video there. I don't know if I could focus, but there it's just like very small. There you go. And I made a whole bunch of those, and I also did a little test to put them in the sprue to see if they would hold. And before doing that, I put some sprue glue at the end and let that dry before I tried it to glue it onto the sprue, or what would be the model, to see if it would adhere and be strong. And it works great. I tried to count how many I would need, but even then, as you can see, this is just basically top and side, one side, and I was trying to keep, started the underside, and I realized, well, there's over 50 here already, but in some cases one piece of rigging would go atop, let's say, one of the struts, and then come back down the other end. So I wouldn't necessarily have two turnbuckles there. It would just be going up to the strut and then back down again. So I made 60. I hope it's enough. If not, I'll have to make more. Then there was a big gaff, or something I did not notice. You probably didn't see it on the video because I've always had this upright, but basically on the bottom of the fuselage, you don't see it now here, but there was a huge hole that I thought would just be part of the part of the wheels, wheel struts and things like that. But then I realized, no, it's not for that at all. The intent was that this piece would go into that hole, and this is actually just for the base. If you want to have it on the base, which I think I mentioned, I don't have the base. It never came with one in the kit because it's see-through, and whoever packaged this kit, it was a used kit just in the bag, didn't have the base. And here you could see that piece would go under there, and I just didn't notice. So looks great now, but it was a lot of work because it was already painted to put in something, because it was too big a hole to just patch with putty. I had to put something in there to basically seal the hole first, and then putty. And in the end, it looks great, but it was just a lot of work to fix that little error. We're getting there now. You can see that this is the result of the lines that I did. It's not quite even, but again, it looks fine. I only did the tops of the wings for now. I don't think we need to. And I think the only other thing I did here was I tried to, I painted over the tail. That's it for now. Okay, so we're back to work on the Jenny. It's actually been months since I last did an update and managed to work on it. I've just been too busy with too many other things. But we made some progress. One thing I've done is somewhat recovered from the disaster of the panel line accent color that I added last time. I was able to repaint most of the sections that were fairly bad, just the base coat over it, basically hide it and mask it a bit. I may do another coat right on this top flap before I finish the rigging there. I'll see. I still see a lot of the more panel line accent color dirt, more than it should be, so I might try to do that. But in the meantime, I have been working on the rigging, which has been very, very, very time consuming. As I mentioned at one point, I'm using the Prim, let's see if you can focus in on there. The Prim, basically it's an elastic thread, and it is very, very, very springy. Basically, when you're trying knots with this, it just wants to spring back. So you can't put a knot and expect it to stay in that knotted position before, so that you can pull and yank it and settle the, secure the knot. It is very hard to work with. But these are the size of the turnbuckles that I've made over here. You can see that it's, I literally had to get a second pair of tweezers so that I can, manipulate the knots that way. I could not do it with one. And I also had to create, the way this works over here is the flaps on the plane are pulled from the wiring that comes off the side of the fuselage, and there's a little ring over here that pulls on those flaps. It actually goes through another to the top here, but so I had to make these very, very, very small rings. Again, it's basically the size of the tip of the my tweezers over here. It's hard to focus in there. Very, very, very small, but I made them. I actually had to make loop and then solder a bit so that it would, you know, not unravel, but it's coming along. I did the rigging. As you can see, the X's that go along the sides, that took me, you know, well over an hour just to do those. Every now and then I'd have to, you know, secure more turnbuckles, glue them in, which again, that alone is pretty tough to do. But once they're in, they're not too bad. I have to use the baking powder along with the CA glue quickly so that they get secured, and later on I'll clean off the knots too. Right now I've just, you know, they're secured, but they haven't been cleaned up and made nice and even. So a few things progressing, still a lot of work to do with the rigging. In the meantime, what I want to show you is there's also I haven't mentioned it, but I've been working on a base, and what this is was just a, you know, piece of wood that I've you know, secured with a mixture that kind of looks like terrain, and added a little bit of actual terrain that I've made myself. Again, this needs a lot of work, but in the end, this is what I envision as the plane sitting on, something like that. So it's getting there. Okay, we're back with pretty much the finished product here. This again has been many months since I last recorded it, because it just took so long, and of late I haven't had as much time, nearly as much time, to put into building models. So it was a few minutes here, a few minutes there, an hour every weekend, or sometimes, you know, it would go 2-3 weeks without working at all. But it's done. I'll show you the base later. I just want to show you kind of like the intricate lattice work with all the rigging over here. That's why I gotta put a mirror. You can see from under, you can see all that, you know, detail that's on the underside that you really don't get to see. The top half also has quite a lot of rigging. Here were those extensions, and you can see the one that I was talking about going from the fuselage over to the, you know, the other knot, the ring over here. I came out, it was a lot of work. It came out pretty good. There's a few things I'm not too crazy about it, but it was the best I can do, and that's what I was aiming for. You can see some of the knots. The way it works is, even with the turnbuckle, it's at a bit of a slant, so it's really hard to have the turnbuckle going in the exact direction it needs to, and sometimes even just the knot would kind of catch on one end of the loop on the turnbuckle, but it's not too bad. One thing I mentioned, I think before, or maybe I haven't mentioned it, was that there were some rigging on the inner side of the cockpit that I could see in some diagrams where it started, but I couldn't see really where it ended, and that's where I ended up watching a movie, The Great Waldo Pepper, where he flies this exact plane, to see where that, you know, that rigging goes. I was going to put it, but then I noticed, like, there's so many variants on this Jenny that some have that rigging and most of them don't. Same thing on the top. There would be different versions of the rigging. I don't know if it was improvements made over the years or just kind of optional, to depending on how much strength you wanted or needed, depending on the type of flying you were doing. So in the end, I didn't put that rigging there because it would obscure the cockpit more than it already is. By the way, the propeller does turn. Not too bad. I like, again, the final product. I don't know how brittle this thing is over time, whether this rigging will let go, like what's the long-term effect of the elasticity on these 3 reds. But for now, this is it. So this is basically it. A few things I have to do, a few touch-ups on. I'm going to be on the base over here. I have a little plaque that I may or may not, finish painting and putting here. Just says, Curtiss Jenny JN-4D, and that's pretty much it. After this, I'm just going to show a few more close-up photos to see what it's like. Hope you enjoyed.